All right, so the top questions that I get asked over and over and over and over again are the same things in every video. One, can we see pictures of your wife? Two, how much you pay for your Tesla? And three, will it supercharge? So I'm going to go answer these questions in separate videos, but today I'm going to focus on the how much did you pay question. So first of all, Dolores is what made this whole thing take off. She was about $14,000. Now, I paid $14,000 for a non-working brick of a Tesla in my driveway. So I started taking apart and, well, look at my repairing a Tesla Model S series videos to find out more information about that. But I removed literally everything from the car. However, I didn't throw everything away when I was finished with it. I legit kept everything because, one, the parts are worth a lot of money, and secondly, don't throw anything away until you're done the project because I'll never know when I'll need a wire connector or something of the sort. That's like a basic rule of thumb when we're building a car or even working on one. You try your best not to throw things away even after you're done because if something breaks, you wish you kept spare parts lying around just in case. So I'm sure you remember the clip where I was moving the battery pack, um, and there's 16 modules in a Tesla battery pack, and only 4 were destroyed in the flood. That means I had 12 modules that were still good. So I was able to sell those good modules for approximately $900 each. So with a $14,000 buy-in, I sold the modules for about 10 grand. So that brings us to about $4,000 for a Tesla with no battery pack. All right. So now the motor, I'm still not sure to this day if that motor worked, but I did sell it to a guy as flooded non-working, and he bought it for 3 grand. So that brought the total price down to about $1,000 for the car as it was. So for a Tesla Model S shell with no battery and no motor, it was $1,000. Now I thought the interior was junk, but again, I didn't throw anything away, and someone hit me up and offered to pay $400 for both seat airbags, which were still good, and a couple leather interior pieces and panels underneath the glove box. So after selling all those parts off, that brought my car cost for the car to essentially free. So Dolores was free after I sold all those parts off of her. So I had a free shell just kind of sitting there. So let's get to the white car. Remember, I had to buy another car to replace the flooded parts because Tesla won't sell you anything. So I had to effectively purchase a second Tesla to fix the first one. Now, I never really got a name for it, but let's just call it Slim Shady for simplicity's sake. Now, I paid about 14,500 for Slim Shady, and right off the bat, I needed the interior, the battery, motor, all electronics and wiring, etc., etc. Now, you'd think to yourself again, there's not really much left after I took that stuff. Well, there's actually a lot left. So I was able to sell all the good airbags that I didn't need in that car. The airbag, steering wheel, and dashboard for $3,000. I sold all the doors for 1,500. The shell itself I sold for 1,700, and the battery fuse and coolant pumps I was able to sell for $400. Now miscellaneous parts added up to another 1,400. Hatch motors, pieces of wiring harnesses, AC lines, a condenser, an air tank, subwoofer, and speakers. Those added up to 1,400. I also have a bunch of parts I didn't sell as yet. I still have the rear hatch and some interior panels, glove box stuff. But after calculating all of these costs, it cost $6,500 for Dolores as you see her today, running and driving. I believe this is the world's least expensive running and driving Tesla. Now it's 6,500 and steadily dropping for this car as I have more to sell. Would you pay 6,500 for this car? I don't really care if you would. That's a rhetorical question. But 6,500 is how much I paid for it, and I'm totally okay with that. Now, time spent. I purchased the car in January of 2016, the first car, Dolores, in 2016. You're probably like, oh, I'm not impressed. Well, I'm happy for you. But remember, I did 2 cars, okay? So it wasn't only Dolores. Let's just say taking apart Dolores, working weeknights, took me a month to take her apart in her entirety. I had to buy another car. So I had to spend another month, month and a half taking that one apart. Because remember, Slim Shady was at a storage yard an hour away from me. So when I wanted to work on the car, it was a 2 hour minimum just to get apart. And after I got all the parts, then the third stage was me loading things back into Dolores, which took even longer because trust me, the reassembly is 5 times harder than the disassembly. So, so you're probably like, well, buddy, that took a long time. I don't have time for that. With all that time that you spent, you could have just bought one. Well, first off, there's no way in hell I'm paying 70 grand for a used Tesla. I wouldn't even pay 40 grand for a CPO one. I figured if I could get it for much less than that, it's a no-brainer. It ended up being about 6 grand, and I think that's fantastic. I'm perfectly comfortable with that. Now, I want to emphasize that this is a hobby of mine. I don't need a Tesla. No one needs one. There was no urgency or necessity behind this. I have a pickup truck that suits my needs just fine. Now, back to this being a hobby. Some people's hobbies are stamp collecting, some ride horses, some play Dungeons and Dragons. Some people just masturbate. Those are hobbies, okay? The only difference is that when you're done masturbating after 6 months, you look back, what do you have? Maybe a sock baby? You know, I have a running and driving car. So most hobbies, you after a while you look back, like I said before, if you make wooden ships, at the end of it, you're like, oh, cool, I have 2 wooden ships. This is fantastic. Me, I have my wife driving my little science experiment, and I say my wife's driving it because I'm not driving that thing. If it leaves me stranded, I'll be very upset. I'd rather have her get stranded than myself. But hey, I don't want to get stuck. It's honest. I'm gonna have her vet out a lot of the issues initially. But anyways, that's where I am with that in terms of the time spent. I didn't mind spending that time at all because I considered it as a hobby. It wasn't labor for me. It wasn't work. The exit strategy for that plan was if things didn't work out, I would just sell all the parts and pretend the whole thing never happened. Now, the other question I get a lot is why didn't I repair the white car, Slim Shady? And that's a fantastic question, and one I went back and forth with because for a long time now, I spent countless hours disassembling Dolores, and believe it or not, I built somewhat of an attachment to her. So the white car needed a ton of work that I'd have to outsource. I didn't want to have to outsource that type of work because it would increase my costs. It's not really building it myself if I handed it off to a body shop and said, here you go. So just a quick rundown, the windshield needed replacement. I'd have to outsource that. The front frame rail needed to be cut and rewelded. I'd have to outsource that. The front cradle needed to be replaced because it was bent. Suspension components were messed up. And the car would have to be repainted in its entirety. And honestly, I just like the black car more. I viewed it as giving up. I set out to rebuild this black flooded car. And oh, wait a second, there's another car here. It's easier. I'll just do that instead. I didn't want to do that. I viewed it as giving up. And because, getting it to a body shop to get repaired isn't really that impressive because the body shop did all the heavy lifting. So what did I replace? Here's a quick video clip about 60% of the electronics that I replaced. This is not everything there. There's also a quick clip here of the interior parts I replaced. Just everything laid out in my driveway. Now, not shown here are the front spindles, the brakes, the rotors, the air compressor pump, the vacuum block for the air suspension, ABS pump, headlights, ballast bulbs, air shocks, front latch, all the electronics, the actuator. I don't think you understand what an undertaking this was. And not to mention the hundreds of nuts and bolts that were rusted that I had to replace too. That's something else for you guys to think about when repairing a flooded car or any car with any kind of water damage. Just replacing the hardware is big too, because you don't want anything load-bearing to fail prematurely. I didn't forget, I still owe everyone a Part 6 to my rebuilding series. Part 6 does not yet exist. I'm hoping to work on that over the next couple weeks, but you'll have hopefully some closure on how I was able to wrap up Dolores. But look at my other videos for an in-depth look to see what was done to get her to the point where she sits right now. Another random, very interesting question that I get is that how did I get 21s and rear-facing seats if the black car didn't come with them? That's a good question. My goal was to never go to Tesla for anything because, I couldn't. Tesla won't sell parts to salvage owners, so I actually bought that Fire Canada car. And if you haven't seen that, what a disaster that was, check out my Drunken Tesla rant where I go into great detail as to how I was able to get that car, as well as a finger in my rectum. But that car in Canada, I paid $8,000 for it. It came with 21s and rear-facing seats, and that's all I really needed. It did have the cold weather package, which I did want, but I decided to be too much effort to retrofit. Um, so yeah, on that fire car, the battery was 100% intact, and I didn't need it. So I actually sold the battery out of that car for 13,000. I then sold the performance drive unit for 7,000. And other than that, I sold a few odds, bits, and ends here and there for about $2,000, and the rest was trash. So I paid 8 grand, and I sold 22 grand in parts. So the total price paid and profit was $14,000. But again, no amount of money in the world could have saved me from the humiliation of picking up that car. So again, check out that story. Um, so after that profit came in, believe it or not, almost immediately I got a ton of people pissed off saying I should have documented the process and photos suck and you didn't do a good job documenting Dolores. I want in depth. So I said to myself, okay, you guys want it in depth? You want to see it again? Let's go for it. I took that money and I rolled it into another Tesla, which was Maeve. Maeve, the red car from the road trip. So that car is an autopilot P85D car that needs a little work, as you could see. So I'll be documenting this journey as well. So that's what kind of prompted Maeve's purchase after I made the money from Dolores, and that's how the hot dogs are made. That is how hot dogs are made. Um, Now, the part I want to emphasize to you is that your donations and Patreons really help. Yep. Here's the shakedown. Here comes the shakedown, guys. They really do help. I know you're laughing, thinking, hey, this guy owns a Tesla, is asking me for money. Well, there's a lot more behind the scenes than that. Keep in mind, I built the car for myself, but the level of documentation I did was for you. I get nothing back from the documentation, all the photos and records I kept. It actually just slows me down significantly when I have to document something. So if I have an hour where, the kids and the wife are out of the house, by the time I have two choices. I could either just jump down, work on the car for a full hour, or I could say, hey, let me set up my camera mount, let me do this, let me think about what I'm going to say. And doing those things really adds up to the time significantly. So that's definitely for you, not for me, because it just slows me down. So there's also a lot of ongoing costs. I pay my editor for his videos. I keep the cars at my friend Sean of the Rev's house. Check out his channel. And that's not free either. Like I didn't approach Sean like, hey, can I keep 2 Teslas in your backyard and kill your grass for a year for free? So no, I pay him when I have the money. I also have to pay Phil, and I'll explain our history, who he is, and what he does in the next You're Building a Tesla Model S series. Again, video equipment. I get lots of comments on how my shots are unstable and I should get a gimbal. Well, your donations help me get there, so that's really awesome. The money's also going to help me get a shell for Maeve. So I need to buy a shell, Tesla shell, so I can rebuild that P85D car. And I'll be taking the motor and battery and all electronics out of that wreck car into a good shell. So that process will be done all over again, but documented a bit better this time. I also have a lot of cool videos coming up. I'll be racing my Tesla versus my Z06, a couple of comparison videos. I want to get my hands on a Leaf, maybe take it apart, maybe build a go-kart of it or something. I just have some really neat content ideas that I want you guys to stick around for. But again, thanks for everything. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks all.